What should my kid pack for college?
I don't know.
How much spending money?
I don't know.
What should we talk about?
I don't know.
So how can I be sure that my kid is keeping up with his classwork?
I don't know. What are we going to do if there are no in-person classes? I don't know.
College Ready 2020. A crash course preparing college parents for the road ahead. Hello, I'm Andrea McCarren, and I'll be your host for College Ready 2020. The transition from high school to college certainly represents a major change for incoming freshmen, and there are also significant challenges faced by students entering their sophomore, junior, and senior years. But it's not just students who need to make major adjustments. It's also a big transition for their parents. In this episode of College Ready 2020, we explore the role of the parent in helping their college students successfully navigate this transition. Yes, supplying money, and frequently lots of it, is a big part of our jobs, and we will deal with that subject in a future episode. But that's not our only job. To help us understand a parent's role during the collegiate years, we turn to Kristin Austin.
My name is Kristin Austin,
who is Senior Director of New Student Programs at Westchester University of Pennsylvania.
In my role, I oversee programs and initiatives that seek to transition new students and families to and through Westchester University.
And we also get insights from Ben Williams.
My name is Ben Williams,
who is Assistant Director of New Student Orientation for Georgia State University.
I oversee orientation, parent and family engagement, and off-campus housing across all 6 of our campuses, including a 7th online-only campus.
We first spoke to Ben and Kristin about the biggest challenges parents face when their students go to college in the fall for the first time.
From my experience working at an institution where I'm responsible for supporting both the parents of 2-year and 4-year college students, universally, the biggest challenge that I see is the process of renegotiating what it means to be a parent, a family member, a supporter, and a champion for their student during that first year. Often there's so many transitions happening for both the parent and the family members, but then also the student as they try to define what their future is, what they want out of life in a way that's oftentimes removed or at least distant and different from how they've navigated those processes with their parent and family members previously.
When I'm leading new student programs or family workshops, family education sessions, I very often say, starting college is like moving to an entirely new country where you don't speak the language, you're not aware of the geography, how to navigate the area, how to order off of a food menu, how to contact people for help. And it literally is like relocating to another country. And it could be just down the street from your house, but institutions are mini countries in and of themselves. In the K through 12 system, we condition parents to have all of the answers that their K through 12 student needs. So we send them newsletters, we provide parent blogs, we provide parent updates. All through K through 12, parents are being communicated about what to expect and how to help their student with everything from kindergarten registration through how to get your student ready for senior year graduation. So parents, supporters, influencers are very accustomed to getting help and guidance on how to support their student. Once they get to college, though, a lot of that immediately goes away. So you have the energy and the momentum of parents who still want to be able to provide help, but it goes away because we suddenly say at the snap of a finger, these students are now adults and parents no longer have a role. So I completely challenge that and say we do. Parents absolutely have a role, absolutely can be important tools for student success, but it's up to the institution to provide parents with that education.
While parents of freshmen may have the most radical adjustments to make in terms of staying connected with their kids' new collegiate lives, Ben and Kristin both agreed that parents of sophomores, juniors, and seniors also face unique challenges.
It takes about a year to get your footing, both as a parent, supporter, influencer, or as a student. So after they've spent a year acclimating, those subsequent years tend to go more smoothly, although each subsequent year has its own big challenge, I would say. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking going into that sophomore year, one of the really big discussions that students are having with their families and supporters is whether or not to move off campus. And then the following year, it might be what internship are they going to get? And then that going into that senior year being what career are they preparing for? So those are three really big transitions that I can associate with sophomore transition, junior transition, senior transition. But I still say that big move to the new country as a first year student is the largest in my experience.
What I've found with sophomore parents, I think specifically in family members, is that there is this readjustment that has to occur when either the student was home for the summer or the student had more time, so they spent more time at home. It's almost like you're going back through that transition process where you have to continue to redefine what that relationship looks like. But then they're also starting to face the reality that their students are having to start think about what are they going to do for internships? How are they going to be successful? And so I think it's, and very much kind of to what we've talked about with that challenge for first year parents, it's much of the same. It's in the same way that college students go through this transformational cycle that they have to progress through each of those years as they head towards graduation. I think our parent and family members also are going through that transition. It's almost as students start to get excited about graduation, parent and family members do as well. But I think we also see the stress of that come to the forefront with each passing year, because it's becoming more and more a reality for those parent and family members that their students about to not be in college anymore, not be in school anymore, and then really starting to shape what their life looks like post-education.
So under normal circumstances, the transition to college each fall is stressful for both students and their parents. However, nothing about 2020 represents normal circumstances. The coronavirus pandemic has completely changed nearly every aspect of our lives and will lead to significant changes in the college experience. We asked Ben and Kristin to speak about the particular challenges ahead.
Oh my goodness. The great 2020, the challenges for us all. I really think it's going to be understanding what the academic and co-curricular experience will look and feel like under the umbrella of COVID-19. We're all really feeling our way through it, in many ways in the dark, and we're laying the tracks while the train is coming. So I think it's just a really big challenge for all of us collectively.
We are truly all in the dark, and the metaphor of building the tracks while the train is coming hits home for me. We're navigating so many challenging aspects. Two, I think the parent and family experience, that challenge of unknown and the quickly shifting environment is a major challenge. For instance, I'm in the state of Georgia where we have reduced a lot of the policies that were put in place, like quarantine, stay-at-home orders, et cetera. And we are one of those states who are experiencing an increase in COVID cases. And while some of that can be attributed to testing, I think some of it is attributed to some of the decisions that are being made, which are challenging because you're competing the economy, which is vital to keep us employed and to keep our systems working, and this major pandemic. An additional thing is we also have parent and family members who are struggling in a system where they are worried for the lives of their students, right? So it's important for us to acknowledge that with where we are from a racial justice perspective as a country, we can't ignore, as campus professionals supporting parent and family members, it's critical for us to understand that we're not just dealing with COVID, we're also dealing with systemic racism and the impacts of that in multiple ways. And so we need to be cognizant of both of those things as we make plans for the fall.
2020 represents so many problematic things. But I also think that 2020, while it has amputated a lot of our senses, it's also extended them quite a bit and has forced us to really use our capacities in different ways. It's forced us to think in different ways and not rely on the typical way of doing business. So there's been some positive that have come out of the challenges of 2020 for sure.
Everything is different and nothing will ever be the same, because I don't think we can ever go back to operating and assuming that something like this won't happen again. But I also think the lessons we've learned from this, similar to what I think institutions learned in the Great Recession, is there's an opportunity for us to think differently and be different as a result.
So in my conversations with families, because of my identities and representation, I don't get a lot of questions about racial safety on campus or predominantly white campuses or any campus. I don't. And I think it's because that's implied that we're already going to talk about that. So when I'm interacting with families of color, the questions are about COVID. That's the biggest change. When I'm interacting with white families, the questions are about COVID because racial inequality is probably not on the forefront of their minds. So for me, the biggest change between all past years of orientation and orientation 2020 is COVID. While there are many more hot topics that are facing us, I think that my unique identities present those topics very differently.
We'll rejoin Andrea in just a moment, but first, a segment called Money Matters, brought to you by Penn Fed Credit Union. It doesn't matter whether your student is an incoming freshman or a graduating senior, and it doesn't matter whether they'll be taking classes from their bedroom at home or you'll be driving them hundreds of miles away. Before classes begin this year, you need to speak to your student about money.
It is hard for parents to talk to their kids about personal finance, but you have to do it. It is critical.
That's Jamie Gayton, Executive Vice President of the Pentagon Federal Credit Union, PenFed, who served for 30 years in the U.S. Army after graduating from West Point. He's the author of the Guide to Personal Financial Planning for the Armed Forces and has taught financial literacy courses for the cadets at West Point, family readiness groups throughout the Army, and a variety of other groups and community organizations. Jamie is also the father of 2 teenagers and a young adult. For this episode of College Ready Money Moments, we asked Jamie to speak to us about why it's so hard for parents to talk about money with their kids.
I liken this to the sex education class that you had when you were probably 10 years old. And they have that conversation, and then they come home, and then you have that tough conversation about the birds and the bees. And you're all proud of yourself after you've had that conversation. But that's just the beginning. At 12 and 14 and 16 and 18, you should be talking about additional topics. And I think the same thing should happen when it comes to personal finance. The problem with that is, in a lot of cases, you open their savings account for them and then that's it. It's very difficult for parents to reveal their personal circumstances to their children, but that's the best way to learn, is to walk them through what it's like to have a credit card, what it's like to struggle to make sure you have enough income to support your budget, what it's like to start your first investment and how powerful it felt for you when you watched the compounding returns. That's how we break this bad pattern. By teaching our young folks, and we do it along a structured path so that they pick up on some of those skills that we didn't pick up on, and they're in a better position to launch than what we were. After all the time and all the money and everything you've invested in your children, launching them without walking through these financial literacy steps, it's a huge disservice.
PenFed Credit Union serves over 2 million members worldwide, offering market-leading certificates, checking, credit cards, personal loans, mortgages, auto loans, and student loans, with members' interests always in mind. For more information concerning the personal financial challenges faced by college students, please visit PenFed at penfed.org.
Going to college involves lots of change, and in 2020, those transitions will certainly be more stress-filled. So given these challenges, what is a parent's job in supporting their college student, in addition to writing lots of checks? We asked Kristin and Ben to discuss some of the ways in which parents can be there for their children during this time of change.
The way I envision parental involvement and parenting in the life of a new student is informed by my professional experience working in this field, and it's also the area of my own personal research. So I wrote my entire dissertation on parental involvement and what that looks like in the life of a current Gen Z student. And what I have found to be an equalizer is to promote parental involvement and see parents as partners and not as pesters in student success. Students, Generation Z students in specific, are far more likely to turn to their parents and influencers for help and support than they are to turn to student affairs practitioners, faculty, and staff. And this is specific to their first year of college. So, because of that, institutions have a missed opportunity if we don't involve parents in transition, if we don't equip parents with the answers to questions that students might have. So while older literature might suggest that parents are over involved or their voice is overrepresented, well, our current economic climate dictates that they be so involved. For example, in the last 12 to 14 years, parents, supporters, and influencers are the co-payers of the education. And previously, that was not the case because government financial aid was enough for students to be able to afford to finance their education on their own. Because that's not the case anymore, parents, supporters, and influencers are now co-purchasers. So we have to include them in the conversation. So that really debunks the myth that parental voices don't matter and we should kick them out of the process. No, we shouldn't, because they are co-purchasers of this product.
It is critical that at a baseline, we understand that parents and family members are our partners. And then I think we then have to think about what are the different styles that we see. I generally boil those down to two things. And I use the language of engaged parents. And that to me is the ideal situation where parent and family members are stepping in when they need to, stepping back when they don't. So for instance, if their student is facing an issue with a faculty member where maybe they're not getting the grade they want, I would want and would see those parents take a step back, versus if there was an issue related to their student feeling safe in housing or something else where the student has done their part to try and navigate the issue, then them stepping in then. That's part of it. And then I think the other part and the thing that is critical is that there's also a certain level of an unproductive style that can exist. And to me, that is in opposition to what I just described kind of as a productive. And it really is honestly a disruptive style from where I sit, where the student is not getting opportunities to learn about navigating systems. The student isn't taking ownership of their admission and enrollment into the process. So for those parents who are so keen to do everything for their student, we really need to create systems and processes to push them out of that. For instance, my team is not allowed to confirm orientation information for a parent and family member without their student making the request. And that infuriates some people. It also proactively helps me to create an understanding and a standard of what productive engagement will look like.
Parental influence looks very different on different days, different situations. So we're talking a lot about physical, emotional safety in this conversation. Well, it's okay for a parent to be over involved if their LGBTQ student is being targeted or harassed. We want them to be over involved because we want any student who is not safe to have as much feelings of support and safety as possible. And then in other instances, we may empower a parent or a family member to step back so that there's a balance from day to day about when parental involvement should rise to the top and when perhaps it should take a back seat. So there's many nuances to this, and the cultural implications should never be ignored. I have seen instances where a student will bring 20 family members to move in, and it is a symbolic move-in experience for that whole family because that student is a first-generation college student. And these 20 people are the people that have empowered this student to get to this move-in point. And they're as much a part of that journey as the student is a part of this journey. And then you see families who have a long history of college education, and maybe It's more like a drop off. Like, hey, I did this already. Maybe I'll help you make your bed, but here's $100. See you later. Figure it out. So it's just such a gamut of parental involvement. And I think there's no one way to sum it or one way to package it because the nuances are just so great.
Of course, finding the right level of parental engagement is a very individual exercise. How can parents prevent themselves from interfering too much in their children's collegiate lives, but at the same time be present if their college students need them? We asked Kristin and Ben to discuss strategies that help parents strike the right balance.
What I would love for higher ed to do is to get away from the pejorative images of helicopter parents and snowblower parents, snowplow parents. I'd like us to get away from those more pejorative images and look at parents as partners. It's so important because we need to look at what tools that students need to be successful, and Gen Z students largely need parents in that toolbox. So whether it meets our needs or not, it meets the students' needs. So what higher ed can do is adjust how we view parents and then equipping them to actually be those partners. So to stay along the lines of analogies or visual imagery, I'm going to introduce Siri. Siri is a virtual assistant. The system is associated with the Apple products, but they use voice queries and a natural interface to answer questions and make recommendations based on what the user asks. The benefit of Siri is that Siri only provides assistance if Siri is asked. Siri is always available. Siri is always in the background. Siri can readjust based on us asking more clarifying questions. Siri can direct us to resources, but Siri does not do the work. So if we look at parental involvement sort of from a Siri perspective, that's what we in higher ed might find to be the healthiest involvement for parents. We don't want parents and supporters doing the work for the students, but we appreciate when they are available to answer questions or to help students adjust or recalibrate when they find themselves backed up against the wall. In order for parents, supporters, influencers to be effective Siris, though, we as higher ed have to have a good relationship with parents. We have to provide them with information, appropriate amounts of information. We have to provide them with their own transitional learning experiences so that when students do ask those questions, parents can answer them in a productive and healthy way for both themselves and for their students.
Ultimately, the key to success in the transition to college is resetting the parent-student relationship and giving more agency to the student, as Ben explains.
When I think about renegotiating engagement, the first element for me is constructing that new context. A great example here is that we recently launched a new parent and family portal that a company provides. And through that portal, we're going to give access to parents to FERPA protected information if their student consents to it. And so for us, very early on, that establishes if you need to talk and you want to talk about things that are going on with your student and about how you can be engaged, I'm happy to. I'm always a resource for you. However, if it's something about taking an action, your student has to be the one doing that. I'm happy to support them navigating that process on your behalf as an administrator, but this is how it's going to work. I think the other element to that, which is critical, is the engagement piece, because I'm setting the stage for how we're going to engage with each other. And I think parent and family administrators should feel really comfortable to say, this is how this is going to work. Each side is going to give and each side is going to take.
I think it just requires ongoing education. We teach parents how to be K through 12 parents, but then we expect them to automatically know how to let go and be a college parent. And it's just not fair. They have to be taught how to be a college parent as well. And I think that the onus is on higher education to do that because we all benefit for all the reasons that we know. Students that are supported from 360-degree influencers just do better. So the onus is on higher ed to teach parents how to be college parents because they don't know. Even if they've been a college student, they don't know how to be a college parent. So again, the way that I personally have endeavored to do it was using a Facebook group as a 4-year classroom, but other ways to do it is by recommended books, parent councils, websites that provide parental education. There are many ways. Higher education just has to embrace parents as students also. They're just students outside of the classroom.
One thing here is for sure, parenting a college student is a big job, especially in 2020. And so, feelings of anxiety and even fear are completely natural. Fortunately, parents are not alone in dealing with these issues, and they can look to their college administration for support and guidance.
You know, the one thing that transcends any parenting style is that if we can work to assuage the fear and anxiety that parent and family members have from day one, then we can create a much more powerful, much more effective community for the universities that we serve. And there's literally no negative for us saying and committing to, we're here to serve all students. And that may mean we need different programs to address the systemic issues that we know exist within society, not just with race, but with socioeconomics, with religion, with status of whether they're an international or domestic student. That is, to me, the key to supporting all parent and family members, regardless of their parenting style, is that we should combat their fear and welcome them.
Every student's college or university plays an important role in structuring and facilitating the next stage in their parent-child relationship. If you have not already done so, please identify and contact the Parent and Family Relations Administrator at your student's college or university as soon as possible. Also, many universities have Facebook groups and email lists for parents, so definitely sign up. These are important resources as you ready yourself for the changes ahead. We also encourage you to teach your students adult tasks they don't already know. This could include scheduling their own doctor's appointments, understanding their medication or health history, filling out forms, laundry, and basic cooking. These skills will be important whether they go away to school or learn from home this coming semester. I'm Andrea McCarren. I hope you're enjoying your summer and that you'll join me for our next episode of College Ready. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to College Ready 2020 wherever you get your podcasts so that you'll receive future episodes. And please also leave us a review to help others find the show too. For parents of college students, additional guidance can be found at collegeready.guide. This show was created in cooperation with the Association of Higher Education Parent-Family Program Professionals. College Ready 2020 is a production of Wise Action.
Audiation.